Eddie, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
How
Thank you, Alex.
How was your day?
Very busy. Very
Yeah?
busy today. Yeah.
Di-
I work at a clinic,
Uh-huh.
and so it's pretty busy.
Is it always like hectic around the clinic, or?
It's hectic around the clinic because it's a medical clinic, and there's various departments. I work in one, and mine's always scheduled. I see about anywhere between 7 to 8 patients a day.
Oh, wow.
For about 45 to 50 minutes.
Cool. Well, before we get into that, let's learn a little bit about you.
Okay.
Where were you born?
Well, I was born in Delano, California. That's 30 miles north of Bakersfield. I was born in Kern County, here in California. My mother was 18 years old when I was born. I'm her oldest son of 6. We moved to Oxnard when I was 4 years old.
So do you remember any of your life where you were born?
Not much. Before we came to Oxnard. I don't remember much.
Yeah.
I remember probably being a spoiled brat because I was the first grandchild on both sides, maternal and paternal. So I was probably a pretty spoiled brat.
So the abuelos were taking care of you.
Oh, yeah.
Very cool.
I kind of built my own story in my own mind as I got older because I used to see pictures with both abuelos.
Yeah. Oh, that's very nice.
Yeah.
So when you guys made the move to Oxnard, was that your dad's decision to come over here, or your mom's, or kind of a joint?
Actually, it was kind of a tragedy. But my mother left my father. Eventually divorced him, and she came here to the Oxnard area because my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, who died when my mother was 5 years old.
Wow.
And her younger brothers all lived in this area. As a matter of fact, here in El Rio, and we moved here, and the first place we lived in was my mother called it a rat occupied apartment behind La Central Bakery on Meta Street. We're down there on 6th and Meta. I'm sure if you lived here in Oxnard, everybody's aware of where that is.
Yeah, that's the little bit shady part of the city.
Well, in those days, I remember
Yeah.
I had somebody gave me, or I don't know how I came into a German Shepherd mixed dog, and I know I must have been 4, maybe going on 5, because I wasn't in school yet. I wasn't in kindergarten yet.
Yeah.
And I went to kindergarten. I used to walk around with that big dog, always walking behind me.
He was your guardian.
Yeah, so I was a little boy with a big dog.
Nice. Well, nobody messed with you, I bet.
Well, I don't remember anybody messing with me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then
Did you guys have family here in Oxnard? Is that why your mom chose to move over here?
we had 3 uncles and their prospective families. They were all married. They were actually my grandmother's youngest brothers. And they were all musicians. They all played the guitar.
Yeah, very cool. Was your mom and dad, were they both Hispanic, Mexicans?
They were both Hispanic. My father was from Jalisco.
Oh, that's where I'm from.
Yeah, an immigrant. I'm not quite sure what part of Jalisco he was from.
Yeah.
And my mother was born in Brawley, but my grandmother, her mother, my mother's mother, was from Milwaukee, Chihuahua.
Wow.
And my grandfather was from Purépero, Michoacán.
Purépero, Michoacán.
Yeah.
That's your mom's parents.
My mom's parents.
And Brawley, where's Brawley located?
Brawley's out in the Imperial Valley, like near Mexicali. Out that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's down south, close to the border.
Yeah. Well, my grandfather, he used to follow the crops back in the 30s and 40s, and so, throughout California, there was 3 brothers that on my grandfather's side that came from Purépero, Michoacán.
Nice.
The oldest one settled in San Angelo, Texas, and the middle brother settled in Ciudad Juárez, Chihuahua, and my grandfather came to California.
Oh, that's very cool. And so you pretty much started school here in Oxnard then?
Yeah. I went to what is Cesar Chavez now, but it was called Juanita School, and I went there.
Yeah, right next to the Parque del Avión in Colonia.
Parque del Avión, yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think I went to that school for like 3 days and I got switched. It's like they couldn't place me anywhere. So and I think I went to Cesar Chavez School, which is now Cesar Chavez, but
Right.
you used to be called Juanita. And yeah, I remember those days. It was 2 or 3 days, and then you going to a new school? I go, okay, whatever.
Yeah. Well, in those days, the colonia was much different than it is now. I'm talking about probably 1958 to 60.
Yeah.
And, all the families knew one another. I could be stealing Mrs. Gonzalez's peaches from her front yard. By the time I got home, my mother already knew what I had done.
I say, go take her some avocados because you took your peaches.
Yeah. ¿Qué andas haciendo allá? En la yarda de la señora.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Those were good old times, though.
Oh yeah, it was a different time.
There was a time where the kids could be, free range kids.
Oh yeah,
you'd go walk the streets. Everybody knew you. Iba el hijo de Jesús or de Virginia, and everybody left you alone, and everybody was safe, and everybody was at everybody's house.
Oh yeah. We used to, we used to roam, in Colonia Park, and I remember when they first put the plane there.
Oh, you do remember?
Yeah.
I've always remembered just being there.
Because we used to be able to sit in it, and so we all wanted to sit in it, and we had to kind of have a little brawl here and there.
Well, I do remember it having like a control panel.
Yes,
there too. They didn't take the stuff off, so you could push buttons and turn knobs and stuff.
From what I vaguely remember, it was almost like they just dropped it.
Yeah, right. Maybe it was an alien ship.
We thought it had landed there.
Right.
I can tell you that my cousins and we used to make a lot of stories about that, because I had this. Era uno de ellos ya falleció, el más grande, the one my age. Eran primos hermanos de mi mamá.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but they were my age, so we used to call each other cousin all the time. We'd hang out all the time. Todo el tiempo andábamos de vagos juntos.
That's nice. So you went to. Have you stayed in Oxnard ever since then?
Yeah, most of my life, with the exception of when I retired from the county. I went to, my wife had got a job in Kern County in Bakersfield. She had a brother over there. And so I retired from the county, and I got a job, and I went to work for family court there.
Oh, okay. So going back to your life in Oxnard, for sixth grade, you graduate Oxnard, and then you go into junior high and high school here in Oxnard also?
Well, what happened was when I was 10, we moved to South Oxnard, which was a totally different world then. So they put me in Bard School. But then there's a school called Hathaway. I went to that school.
I don't remember a Hathaway school.
It's on Dolly Street, like right off Saviors, and it's a street right before you get to Pleasant Valley Road on Saviors.
On Saviors.
Yeah,
right
going towards the beach on Saviors.
Okay.
And there's a street called Dolly, and as you turn into that neighborhood, right in the middle of the neighborhood is Hathaway School.
It's not Harrington?
No, Harrington's over by on Geisler, over Channel Islands and Geisler.
I went to Harrington.
Yeah,
that's why. But it's in a similar area, but a little bit farther away.
Yeah, well, Harrington's still Oxnard's elementary school district. Hathaway was Hueneme School District.
Oh, so it's Port Hueneme.
Hueneme Elementary School.
Okay.
But what I was going to say about those schools is I went to Hathaway when it was brand new. I went to Blackstock when it was brand new.
Yeah.
And I went to Channel Islands when it was a year old.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you
andaba estrenando.
That was good.
Yeah, as I went through. Yeah.
You were the test.
I was the test bunny. Yeah.
That's pretty cool, man.
Well, another tidbit of information. I remember when I got to Hathaway School, I was the only Mexican in my class.
You were there was a bunch of gringos there, and
a bunch of gringos. Yeah, who are you?
Was this in the 60s and 70s?
This is, let's see. I went to...
Or earlier than that.
I went to... I remember I was the first year at Hathaway was the year they killed Kennedy, which would have been 1963. I was 9 years old.
Yeah.
So
you were in there. Those were the little bit of uncomfortable days for us Mexicans being around, because there was not a lot of Spanish being spoken. There was not a lot of good role models at the time for us.
None.
Everybody was white as the driven snow.
Yeah. Well, I just to go along those lines, I remember I always tell this story to some of my clients, patients, the young ones. I tell them that when I went to Channel Islands, I had this teacher. He was freshly unpacked teacher, first year out of UCLA, and he was a teacher there. He taught at Channel Islands for years. I understand he's passed away now, but he was a young guy, probably in his late 20s, and he tells me one day, he says, "Hey, can you stay after class for a minute?" I was in what we called at that time, we was channeling into standard classes, because they had remedial, they had standard, then they had college prep and high school district. I don't know if they still have it that way, but
yeah, they used to have that way when I was going to school too.
So the teacher says to me, "Can you stay right after class? I got to talk to you." And I said, yeah, sure. And he says, "What are you doing in my class?"
This was the standard class?
This was a standard class.
Was it for math, English, or what was it?
It was for geography and health.
Okay.
And, I'm looking at him, I don't know what to say. I hardly had anybody that had graduated from high school in my family.
This is where they told me to go.
Yeah, they put me here. I don't know. He said, "Well, you've been in my class for 10 weeks now, and every week we have a quiz, and every week you've got a perfect score."
Yeah.
And he says, "What are you doing in my class?" I said, "You know what, Mr. So-and-so, I don't know." He says, "You know what, meet me at lunch. I'm going to take you down to the counselor's office." So he takes me down to the counselor's office, and he he tells the counselor, it was this older guy, probably in his mid-50s, much older gentleman. And he says, "I think this kid needs to be in college prep. I think he can go to college."
So the teacher saw something in you.
The teacher was telling the counselor.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh, okay, no problem. Let me talk to him, leave him here, and I'll take care of it." So then the teacher left, and he says, "Have a seat." So I sit down. He goes, "So you want to go to college prep classes, huh?" He says, "So you want to go to college?" And I said, "Well, I think I'd like to try, And he looked at me and he says, "Your people don't go to college."
Wow.
And he says, "The best thing you can do is hopefully maybe you can hook onto the city, with the city of Oxnard, driving a trash truck or something like that."
Yeah.
And I remember thinking to myself, I don't know what it was in me. I was 14 years old, and I wanted to jump across the desk and start choking, because I said, "What?"
Yeah, back in those days, man, it was right up in your face. You'd see it everywhere, and people were not hiding it. They were kind of proud to show that they were racist and give you that hard stop. It's like, what do you think you're doing? You can't handle that. You're just a Mexican.
Well, something in me...
Stick to your lane.
Yeah, stay in your lane. Yeah. I don't know what it was. Something in me just said, because he even looked at me, he says, "Well, you sure you want to try this?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I think I'd like to try." I was being polite. I was taught to be polite.
Authority figure in front of you. He's your...
And I said, "Well, can I go back to where I am now if it's too hard for me?" I was still letting him, I had some doubt. I didn't know.
Right.
And so anyway, he says, "Okay." He says, "Just come back, see me if you can't cut it." He says.
Okay.
So then I go in there, and I don't remember, it was the day after or the week later or whatever it took for them to get a class to put me in the college prep class. And when I walked into the class the first day, there was this big football player, Caucasian guy. Mm-hmm. And I walked into the class, and he looks at me, looks down at me, because I was only 5'2" when I was a freshman. 5'11" now.
Yeah, there you go.
But he looks at me and goes, "What are you doing in here?" And I remember again, I thought to myself, these guys are really pushing my butt, man. I go, "I'm doing the same thing you are, man. Get out of my face."
Right.
Because I was kind of a smart aleck guy, smart mouth guy,
Yeah.
That was my defense mechanism, because I was too short. Anyway, so the end of the story was that I ended up with a 3.5, and I got accepted to UC Santa Barbara when I graduated.
Nice. Were you able to take those situations where those assholes were talking shit to you like that and use that as motivation to prove them wrong?
I didn't know it was motivation at the time. I just knew at that time that I wasn't going to take any of their crap.
That's good.
That was my thing. But there was a group of us, and there was There was quite a few, because in those days they used to bus all the students from Rose Park, and I don't know what that area is where Crawford Street is. There's a little it's a little bit of a different track that used to be right across First Street from the public housing.
Well, that's Colonia, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's considered Colonia. Sure,
Yeah.
it always has been.
But it wasn't the projects, but it was Colonia.
It was still Colonia, yeah. But the rest of Colonia used to go to Oxnard High.
Right.
And that little section, that neighborhood there, and definitely Rose Park, they used to bus them over to Channel Islands.
Okay.
So what was kind of cool about Channel Islands in those days, again, I didn't notice it. I was too young at the time, now that I look. It was very diverse. There was a good amount of blacks, good amount of Caucasians, good amount of Latinos.
A lot of Filipinos, too. I went to Channel Islands also. When
not
I
at-
went, there was a lot of Filipinos.
Not at that time.
No, not when you.
No, not when
That came later then.
That came later. That came closer to the late 70s, early the 80s.
Yeah, those were my years in high school in Channel Islands. And there was a lot of Filipinos, a lot of blacks, some Mexicans, and a lot of whites.
As a matter of fact, you know where the fence, I don't know if you're familiar with Channel Islands, and now they built a football field, kind of like a football stadium.
Yeah.
And where the fence is now, that there's a street called Gary, and there's a park right there.
Yeah,
All that was tomato fields.
yeah.
All the way to Pleasant Valley.
Hell, there's no houses there.
There was no houses there.
Yeah.
The college wasn't there. Nothing was there. Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah. So you went to high school there, and you went through all that. What made you decide to go into higher learning after high school?
Well, that was interesting because at that time the Chicano student movement was in all its glory. It was. I had got influenced by going to take some summer classes at Moore Park, and so the Chicano student movement was starting to wind itself up.
To pick up.
And we were looking to, all the leaders were looking to get equal opportunity, to higher education.
Yeah.
And somehow, not only me, but a few others in my class, they kind of, influenced us to seek higher education, and so that's what we were doing. Now, I say I got into UCSB with a 3.5. You'd never get in there now with a 3.5, okay. At that time I always tell some of my patients, I say to them, in those days they were begging us to go to school. You know? And they open, affirmative action was on and all that. So
yeah, well, they wanted to get representation, and they also wanted to get role models for the next generations to show up and do more things.
Yeah.
So you went to which university did you go to?
UC Santa Barbara.
University of Santa Barbara. Yeah. And how many years did you go there?
Well, you know what? I went there, and now I'm going to segue into why I me puse de vago afterwards.
Okay.
I went there, and it was a real struggle for me. I remember I really, much to probably the counselor's chagrin, when I got there, I bombed on a couple of essays that I had to write because I didn't know how to write at the college level. And so I tell this story to my own kids. I said, when I got that first essay back, I thought the teacher cut her veins open and it had so much red ink on it.
That's one of the things that I don't know, maybe it happened to you too, but when I was going to high school, they never give you the base of knowing how to study and how to take good notes. That's something that they just kind of throw you in the middle of the water and hope you figure out how to swim.
Yeah.
I hope they're doing different now, where they actually teach kids how to take notes and how to listen and how to prepare for a plan and how to write. Because that wasn't happening when I was going to high school.
Well, I don't know that they're doing that now with the technology that there is now. There's spell check and all these other things, and you can actually format essays and just fill in the blanks a little bit here and there,
Yeah.
In those days, we had to do everything, on a typewriter, actually.
Yeah.
And but much to the credit of the instructor, the English instructor, she said, you need to come and see me after class.
Yeah.
And so I went and I took my bloodied essay, and she says, I'm going to help you.
Good.
And she did.
That was a good teacher.
That was a good teacher.
Because other people will just push you away and say,
No, I swear that when I was walking home, I wanted to run home. I said, I remember asking myself, I don't know what I'm doing here.
You felt overwhelmed.
I don't belong here.
Good thing for the teacher to notice it and say, "Hey, this kid needs a little bit of push, so let me push him."
Well, I don't know. If there were other students like me, nobody ever admitted it. You know?
Yeah.
Everybody was trying to be intellectual in those days.
Yeah.
You know. But and I definitely was not an intellectual. When I came out of high school, I was a baseball player.
Yeah.
I had played baseball.
So where did you hit your stride in university? It was the second year, third year, or?
I never hit it. I was struggling money wise. I was struggling to stay there. I was being able to pass my classes. I wasn't getting good grades. I wasn't going to get good enough grades to try to go to law school, which is what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, then my sister, who's 5 years younger than I am, she started a band. Because ever since she sang her first note, my parents invested a lot of money and time into her to try to get her to, be a singer, I guess.
Yeah.
So she called me one day, and I had a cousin who was 6 years older than me, and he was a really good trumpet player.
Mm-hmm.
And she calls me up and she says, "Hey Ed, we made this band, and we're gonna do this. We need a guitar player." And I said, "I can't play guitar with you guys, man. I don't even have an electric guitar." "Oh, it's okay. We'll get one, And I thought right away, myself, it's going to be one of those from Rite Aid or, it used to be Thrifties,
No, you go to Sears and get it from the catalog for $50.
Either one of those. I
$25.
Silver tone from Sears, yeah.
Yeah.
But so she kept after me, and my cousin kept after me, and I finally said, "Okay, I'll help you guys until you find somebody." Boy, was that a mistake.
Yeah, that never works out like that.
That never worked out. I ended up dropping out of college, and then in those days there were no DJs. So because I was listening to music in English. I didn't start listening to music in Spanish until I went to Mexico when I was 16. Then I got into Roberto Carlos and Los Angeles Negros and things like that.
All the ballads, the slow songs.
All the things that the girls liked, because I was always chasing after the girls.
Oh, of course.
I was 16.
Of course. What else is there in life at that age?
Yeah. So she started a band. I started playing, and then I ended up dropping out of college and wandered around with different bands for a while, and then I got into the grupero movement for a while, and we were playing that kind of.
That's cool. You want to get into that part of your life, or you
want? Yeah. I'm kind of doing it chronologically, but
okay.
Yeah.
So that year that you were doing that was in the 80s already, or was it?
No, this is still the 70s. Yeah,
the 70s.
Still the 70s.
So the Chicano movement was going.
Yeah, by this time, by the late 70s, I was not really in tune with the Chicano movement anymore. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, I noticed that, because the Chicano movement was on when I was in college, up to about 75, I noticed it. But when I left college, when I came back to Oxnard from Santa Barbara, I noticed all of a sudden there were because we used to get together and cruise up and down Cooper Road in the Colonia.
Yeah,
it was like a big street party.
Yeah, that was like the old Saviors.
Yeah, well, see, Saviors was after my time, even but we would. It was like a big street party on Cooper Road. I tell kids that now. Some of my patients that come in and talk to me, and they go, "Really?"
Yeah.
They find it odd.
You get in your car and keep driving around.
Yeah, just go, just up and down and. But yeah, it was Sunday nights. It was like a big street party, and it was fun. People from Santa Paula would come, Ventura, all the different cities. In Fillmore.
It was the hangout spot for all the teenagers
on Sunday evening
to hang out and meet the girls and meet the boys.
Yeah,
Have a good time.
But then I kept playing. I playing with I started playing in bars.
Uh-huh.
I used to work in a gas station, and I remember my check was $90.35 a week.
Damn, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money, Eddie.
Well, it was even more because playing music.
Yeah.
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I'd make $245.
So you're making more on your side gig than on your regular job.
So then all of a sudden, we're playing at this place called La Casa Tropical. Me and these three other guys, and some guy walks in and says, "Hey, I'm interested in recording your band. And I'm thinking, what? And I remember thinking, who is this guy? You know, he's yanking my chain or what? What's he want?
You guys must have been pretty popular if somebody's coming up to you like that saying to record you.
Well, my sister was no longer with us at the time. It was just the four of us. Can I say the name of the band?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, at that time, so we it was called Punto Quatro, the band.
Punto Quatro, okay.
So because there was only four of us.
Yeah.
And so we were playing at Casa Tropical, and this guy shows up, this Cuban guy shows up talking with his accent, and one of the guys in the band, the keyboard player, says to me, "Hey, Eddie, this guy wants to talk to you." So I look at him. He's a short guy. I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I was always kind of, like reluctant to believe it. You know, I always think, ya me resuré, no me hagan la barba. You know what I mean?
You were always skeptical.
I was always skeptical. That was the word I was looking for. Yeah, but they. So then make a long story short. So we go through that period. He says, "You know what? I produced. You ever heard of Los Terrícolas?" And I had heard of them, but I wasn't into them. You know what I mean?
Was this Punto Quatro? Is this after the Grease album or before?
This is what came after.
Oh, so you guys recorded the Grease? That was with your sister, right? With Debbie?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was never happy with that recording, but
really, I thought it sounded pretty cool.
You know what? In those days, now with the technology, it's they have auto tune and they got this and they got that.
It doesn't sound the same.
In those days, if I did a lead on the guitar, I got one take.
Yeah.
I got one.
Yeah, because the studio time is running and it's expensive.
Yeah. I remember it was in the mediocre studios. It was $75 an hour.
Yeah, and that's a lot of money for a band that doesn't have any money.
Yeah.
So you better get it right the first time.
So he says, "Do you guys? It'd be nice if you guys had a girl singer." And I go, "Well, I know a girl. It was my sister."
Yeah.
So.
Has music always been in your family, Eddie?
Always, yeah, pretty much. My mother was singer, recorded a couple of songs with
she did. So she's recorded on a couple of albums.
Not albums, just 45s in those days. Yeah.
Okay,
just a
very
couple
cool.
of 45s. Yeah,
Nice.
we just lost her in April. Yeah, she passed away. She was 89.
May she rest in peace.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So your music has always been in your family then, as far as
my uncles. I mentioned the three uncles. My grandmother, my mother's mother, played the guitar and sang.
Yeah. And who did you learn guitar from?
My uncle, when I was about 9 years old, my uncle was a requinto player.
Okay.
And he had, as a matter of fact, small world. One of the trio members with my uncle Alex.
Yeah.
Was Ramon's father.
Oh wow. That's cool.
Yeah.
Oh, for the people that are listening, a requinto is like the smaller version of a guitar, right? It's like that one
It's
right there.
the fifth, yeah.
So you got the big one and you got the small one, that's the requinto, which does most of the leads.
Yes, yeah. Well, that was developed according to the internet.
Yeah.
Which you can't always trust. But I've read a little bit about Trio Los Panchos.
Uh-huh.
And Alfredo Gil, who was the requinto player for Los Panchos, he developed that requinto, that fifth. It's the fifth. We call it the tercera in Spanish, but it's actually the fifth.
Right.
And he developed the requinto, so it would be it would be tuned higher, but he was trying to emulate the sound of a violin.
Oh wow.
Yeah. That's Los Panchos were the one that came up with that idea.
We'll make it a smaller guitar so that you can tune it higher pitched, and then it'll.
That's my understanding.
It sounds really cool though, especially in trios. I mean, it really when they do the and it's funny how they said that that's un requinto. They call it actually the instrument,
Yeah, the lead.
They call it the lead. When they do the lead, it sounds so much nicer than just a regular guitar doing the same lead.
Yeah.
Because the pitch is just slightly higher.
Well, my uncle was real good at playing. I came to call it el estilo tareacuri, which is I don't know if you're a famous singer Amalia Mendoza.
Yeah.
She had a brother, Juan Mendoza, who had a trio.
Yeah.
And they sang a lot of like guapangos, and more ranchero style than the bolero. My favorite requinto player over the years became Juan Neri, el de Los Tres Haces.
Los Tres Haces, man, you cannot compete as far as trios go. I think he's the GOAT.
He's the
I'm pretty sure people know.
To me, is
people hear Los Panchos
Yeah.
and stuff, but no, Los Tres Haces. I mean, their songs are so complicated.
well. The reason he always fascinated me because he was a jazz player.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I know a few songs, or I used to know, I haven't played them in a while, but he uses jazz chords, a lot of jazz chords on the boleros.
Wow.
Yeah,
No wonder it sounds different.
it does. A lot of triads, and I currently play in a Latin jazz band, Latin jazz rock band. I don't know if you've heard of Nuestro.
I think I've heard of them. Yeah.
Yeah, they were founded by Ruben Palazuelos.
Okay.
I started playing with him, once a month, every couple. We don't get together and play that much anymore. 'Cause he's a year older than I am, and I've known Ruben since high school. He went to Oxnard, I went to Channel Islands.
What type of music do you guys play?
We play a little bit of everything. We kind of play it his way because he actually did 2 CDs with about 10, 12 songs on each CD.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Some instrumentals. He did an arrangement to "In the Midnight Hour" who was sung by Wilson Pickett.
Yeah.
And then he did a medley with "Sitting in the Park." It was an oldie, but he adds all day music and grooving and just he puts like 4 songs together.
It's kind of those one of those albums that you're gonna go on a long trip and you just throw it on the player and just coast down the highway and just listen to all the songs.
Yeah, I played with him on Sunday, and I was funny because there wasn't too many people there, but there were some pretty rowdy people, and they kept asking him for songs that were on those CDs, and I
nice.
kept going like, "Whoa, wow, okay."
He's got groupies.
He's got groupies. Yeah, yeah. I was sitting way in the back like I usually was, but yeah. But it's fun playing with his band.
Well, that's very cool. So you're playing in the band, and then you're playing these gigs in Oxnard, and this Cuban guy comes up to you and says, "I want to record your band," and you're like, "What the hell's going on?" So what happened after that?
Well, he put us under contract, and he had us record 3 albums a year for the next 5 years.
Was that with Los Terrícolas?
No.
Who was just an independent band?
It was Punto Quatro.
It was still Punto Quatro?
With my sister Debbie.
Okay, your sister was still on that album too.
Yeah, she recorded all the albums we recorded. She was on them.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Did you get to tour with that album?
Yes, we did. We did.
Nice.
We had a couple of really strong gigs in Texas.
Nice.
In the Houston area, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio. There were other bands on the same. They always used to team us up with like Los Tigres del Norte or Ramon Ayala because there was a contrast,
Yeah.
They would pull their people and we'd pull a little bit of people, and all of a sudden
Yeah. I wonder if that's the same time that El Gordo Delgado was doing all those gigs and setting them up.
Yeah, we used to work for El Gordo in San Jose.
Really?
His son Kiko was he's got to be close to probably in his 60s now.
Yeah.
But at the time when we were starting to go out and play these major dances, right?
Yeah.
We were never headliners, but we were part of the package deal, and he used to hang out with us all the time.
That's nice.
Because we were about the same age. And so.
Talk about a really cool story with Gordo Delgado. He was a migrant that came over here and just took over the industry and just was a big dog in booking all these big events.
Yeah.
He got to the point where he was regional, then he became national to the United States, and then he became worldwide too, doing all kinds of concerts. So that's a really good story. I would have loved to, talk to him and pick his brain, but unfortunately he's already gone.
Yeah, he's passed away. Well, he was in those days when we started. We were starting to, for lack of a better term, to tour.
Yeah.
We were, especially here in California, man. He controlled all the plazas. He had Fresno. He had L.A. and.
Well, he did not only to California, but he did it to the whole United States.
Yeah. Well, eventually,
Chicago, New York, and all over the place. Madison Square Garden. He was there with a couple of bands too.
Well, we worked for them pretty steady from probably the time we recorded in '78 to about '81.
Yeah.
So about 4 years there, we were always working for them. We didn't work every week of the year, because usually, even with the Terricolas, when I worked with the singer, we only worked like 35 weeks out of the year. We didn't work 52 weeks,
Yeah.
32 to 35 weeks out of the year.
Yeah, you need to relax once in a while.
Well,
Because that road.
I didn't want to relax. I needed the money.
Yeah, but that road life is hellish sometimes.
No, it's terrible.
You wake up one day and you look at your calendar and you say, "Shit, I've been to 6 different states and I don't remember nothing from it because I'm going from venue to venue. Just hurry up and set up and then tear down and go to the next one."
My wife Lupe, who I've been, she's been my rock, and we've been married 44 years.
Nice, congratulations.
Thank you, and she put up with a lot, man. I was gone a lot,
It's a rough life.
It's a rough life, yeah.
Yeah. So was my friend Pepe, was he in the same band with you at the same time?
He was a drummer.
He was a drummer.
He was one of the drummers. He was the drummer with the longest tenure. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Yeah, because he's he's a producer. He's been a DJ. He knows about music.
Yeah, he's very talented.
He's very talented, and he as a drummer, I always called him. To me, he was a metronome. He's a very good drummer.
Oh, that's the most important part of a drummer,
Not real flashy, but he's always in the pocket.
Yeah, that's what you want from a drummer. You don't want somebody to overpower the whole band.
Yeah.
You want somebody to keep the bass stable. If you have a good drummer and a good bass player, that means the rest of the band can sound good no matter what.
Well, the bass players, we had Victor. Victor played bass, and then one of the most naturally talented musicians, he's passed away now too. One of the most naturally talented musicians I ever met in my whole life was Carlitos Alcalá.
Okay.
Yeah, he passed away, but he was eccentric, and he had his own style of doing things, but he was a really talented musician.
And what did he play?
He played the bass.
The bass guitar.
Yeah, he played the bass, but he also played keyboards. He sang, and he did all kinds of stuff. Like I said, he's probably one of the most naturally talented musicians I ever worked with.
Well, if you have a talented musician with the bass player and a metronome with your drummer,
it was a piece of cake. It was a piece of cake.
Everything else is just icing on it,
Yeah. No, and when we had that lineup, we probably worked and made. I didn't become rich, obviously, but
you made a living out of it.
I made a living, a little bit of it, scratched out a little bit of a living out of it.
That's nice.
And we got to play some really nice gigs, at the LA Convention Center. There was a sports arena in El Paso, Texas. I'm talking, 12,000 people.
Yeah, they're big venues.
Yeah, big venues, and I mean, nobody knows who we were, because they were just focused on the singer, but we were making the music.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, man. Yeah, when I was in bands, the stage time was like, dopamine.
Oh,
it just made you feel real good. Everybody's having a good time. You're playing your instrument. And you see people smiling and laughing and giving you the heads up.
Well, with the Terricolas, it was a trip because all the people that were in the front, they were all singing the songs.
Yeah.
I'm convinced to this day that, the Terricolas recorded those songs, and they're great songs. I mean, people loved them.
Yeah.
I wasn't particularly crazy about it, but, there's a couple of I like Hoy Te Confieso and Dos Cosas, just 2 or 3 songs that I used to like to play.
Yeah. Well, Eddie, before we get into the Terricolas, I'm a little thirsty. Would you like something to drink? Can I get you some water, some juice, a beer, tequila?
I'll take some water.
Water?
No, I don't drink.
Okay. Do you like water cold?
Anymore.
Or do you like it at room temperature or cold?
Cold's fine.
Cold's fine? Okay. So start thinking about Terricolas so we can get a little bit into that.
Okay.
And you keep talking. The cameras are rolling.
All right.
I'll be listening to you.
Thank you. No, I was just remembering. In those days we didn't get as many pictures, or we couldn't post pictures on anywhere where we went. But when we get together with our mutual friend, and I call him my compadre because we spent a lot of time together with Pepe.
Yeah.
And he when we get together now, all we do is laugh. Remember some of
you reminisce
about the adventures and some of the things that went wrong, But yeah, we just laugh, and he's always had a really good attitude about that, about the whole experience.
Yeah.
But you wanted to get into the terrícolas.
Yeah, so you're playing in Punto Quatro, and then as far as the story goes, as far as I know it, is you guys were on the same tour as they were. You were like they were the headliners, and you were like the second band.
Well, we had recorded a bunch of covers from the disco time. Some Donna Summer tunes, and they were, I can't describe them any other way other than they were disco covers, but Pepe wrote some lyrics out in Spanish, and so my sister sang them. So we were supposed to get people to dance, and the terrícolas were playing their songs, so they would put us on the same.
Right.
So we got to know each other. We probably worked, I don't know, maybe at least 12 weeks together, somewhere in there.
So like 3 months, 4 months.
For like 3 months, yeah. And we eventually, so we went back. By this time, my sister is married now, and she, her husband had a real good job, and she didn't really want to work anymore with us. And so okay. So then we started playing at a local bar here over on 7th and Oxnard Boulevard. And they had just opened it at that time. And I remember the lady saying, I want to hire you, and she says, how much you charge me for the weekend? And I can't remember what I told her, but it was like 2.5 times what the other bands were charging.
Was it the I don't want to do it price?
It was kind of like, I don't want to do this, but if I do it, I'm going to get what I want.
Right.
And so she says, oh, no, me estás robando. And she goes on, and I go, well, okay, I'll tell you what. Give me this much for a Friday night, and then on Saturday, you let me have the door. So
You sell all the booze and let me have the
door.
door.
And let me have the door. And so she says, okay. So we show up to play, and the line to get in on a Saturday was from the corner of Oxnard Boulevard and 7th almost all the way around to where Garcia's mortuary was.
You're talking about 3 blocks?
Well, there's now there's a pool hall on A and 7th.
Yeah.
Well, it was all the way around past that pool hall.
Damn.
And the lady says to me, "Me estás robando."
Oh, que la fregada. You made the deal, lady.
But I said, ¿sabe qué? So I got 3 times what I wanted for the weekend. So,
well, you bet on yourself, and you came out ahead.
Well, but I think that also boosted the rest of the bands too, because then the rest of the band, because when we would leave, we would leave quite a bit, to go out on play the bigger dances with Delgado.
Well, so your sister was already settled in.
Well, she
didn't want to do the traveling.
She didn't want to do the bar.
Yeah.
She would travel with us, but she wouldn't do the bar.
Okay.
Yeah, but then as things moved forward, she didn't want to travel, and so she kind of just kind of petered out, and and because we had played with those terrícolas, we were playing in that bar, and then the promoter who used to schedule or book the terrícolas and us for the dances was the same guy.
Okay.
So one day on a Monday, he calls me, he says, Eddie, coño, me tienes que ayudar. And I said, what happened? He says, pues llegó el guitarrista de los terrícolas y lo regresaron a Venezuela.
Oh, shit.
And
what happened?
And I thought to myself, well, what's that got to do with me?
I didn't do it.
I didn't do it. Well, he was caught carrying some stuff he shouldn't have been carrying. So he got that supposedly was the story. I never verified.
Was he stopped at the airport or something?
Yeah, he was stopped at the airport.
Oh, okay.
So then he kept telling me, no, coño, que. So I said, well, okay, but I said, I don't know their music, man. I'm going to do the best I can. No, nomás este fin de semana, nomás un fin de semana.
Just pretend you're playing.
So, yeah. So then you could do that nowadays, but you couldn't do it then, right? Yeah. But, so I said, okay. So I had a little Walkman, and I bought a couple of their cassettes, and I told them to make me a list. And so there I am on the airplane flying to San Antonio.
Just trying to get memory burned.
Just trying to you know, because they're not difficult to play. You know, there might be a little turnaround chord, you know, somewhere, but nothing real out of the ordinary, right?
Uh-huh.
But I had never played their music, never. Anyway, make a long story short, 1 week turned into 14 weeks.
Holy shit!
Yeah.
And was that just you by yourself?
But just
helping
me.
him out with the guitar.
Just me. So when I did that stint with them, you know, just as the guitar player, then they had a great idea. They said, well, why don't we just not pay for the other musicians and we'll have you guys back them up.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it because I thought they were gonna pull us off the stage and beat the heck out of us, you know.
Plus, also that means that your Punto Quatro is no longer Punto Quatro.
Well, I think.
Or was at that point you were already going to break up anyway because?
Well, we were already kind of, you know, my sister wasn't showing a lot of interest in continuing, and we were starting to have trouble because Pepe, much to his credit, he wanted to record cumbias, pero cumbias románticas.
Okay.
At that time, we used to play this cumbia that was recorded by the Diablos, and my sister used to sing it, and they, you know, people used to think that we recorded it, and it wasn't us, you know.
Do you remember the name of the cumbia?
¿Por qué te fuiste?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. ¿Por qué te fuiste dejándome tan solo con mi sufrimiento? Yeah. And I remember Pepe saying to all of us, you know, and to the promoter, to the producer too, that we should record, and he wouldn't listen to us. He looked at us like we're all a bunch of dummies, you know.
It worked for Selena.
It worked for a lot of people after the fact, okay?
Right?
It worked for a lot of people 10 years later.
Damn. Well, I guess Pepe was a little bit ahead of his time.
It might have been, yeah.
And like I was talking to him and other friends that we talk about music, is a lot of time you have these corporate people that are running the labels and stuff that are really not musicians, so they don't see the vision. They just see, this work, do it again.
Yeah, do it
this
again.
work, do it again. It's like, no, it doesn't. That's not the creative way of doing it. You innovate. You do new sounds.
I think that's what's nice about it now is that there's more ways of doing your own music.
Yeah.
And not only that, but I remember the first time I went to Chicago. They took us to Chicago, and there was one station, Spanish language radio station, that was on from 12 o'clock in the middle of the day till 6 o'clock in the afternoon, Tuesday through Saturday. When I went back with Nestor to Chicago with the Terrícolas in 82, there were 17 Spanish language radio stations in the greater Chicago area.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just blew up, you know. It's just so.
Well, the market was there.
The market was. I think the market was always there, but it needed other, you know, Latino radio station owners to change the programming. So the bands that came afterwards, you know, there was more places to play their music. There were salseros, there were norteños, there were, you know, some stations would play Ramon Ayala, some stations would play, you know, Roberto Carlos.
Romanticas or internationals and stuff.
My point is that I noticed that it just blew up, you know, the medium, you know.
Yeah, well, that's cool. And so you're playing with Terrícolas for those weeks, and then what happened? Why'd you stop playing music? Why'd you stop doing it?
Why did I stop doing it?
Yeah.
Well, I started in 81, and in 1988, there were a number of things. They wanted us to go to Mexico. There was a company that was interested in us over there, which shall remain nameless, but we... And they said to us, you know, necesitan irse para México, o no la van a hacer. And by this time, I have 2 kids, and I've been married, you know, close to 8 years.
Yeah, it's just that I can't do it anymore.
I can't do that. Yeah, the big thing. One of the other things that happened to my son, who's now just turned 40 last week, he says, I remember I used to come home from the road, and my wife would always say, te voy a hacer una carne asada, you know, eat some home cooking, right?
Yeah.
And great, you know, I said, you know what, llévate a la niña and deja al muchacho aquí conmigo. and he was like 2. He was still in a diaper, with his bottle, and as soon as he found out I was in the house with him by himself, he didn't know who I was.
He got scared.
He freaked out. He ran into the corner and started crying. And I remember
that'll hit you in the face really
oh
hard.
man! Well, when they came back, we were both crying. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just said, "Nah, I'm done, man." That's it.
I got a bond with my son.
It still took me 6 months to stop playing, because I couldn't make the money I was making on the road at a
Right.
regular job, So it was hard. It was hard to leave it, but eventually I did. And I did a sales job, and
But it sounds like music was a good part of your life, an experience that very few people have.
well,
done.
for a long time I felt, honestly, and I don't want to turn into a basket case here, but
It's okay. Look, we have some tequila to help you
yeah.
out.
No, I felt like a failure for the longest time. Like I had tried at something and it didn't work. And as I started to reflect on it more, I started thinking, well, you know what? I left it all on the field, man. I left it all out there. I did everything I could to make it work. It just wasn't in the cards for me. You know? So I've come to terms with it, and but when I went back to when I had got the sales job, they bypassed me. I ran into some racism again, and they wouldn't put me in a middle management job. So
Because you were too dark skinned?
maybe, I don't know, either that or too ugly, one of the two. but they
Well, you said racism. I imagine they didn't like that you were Hispanic and they didn't want to put you in a power position.
well, you know what they told me exactly was that they said to me, if you had a BA, we'd promote you.
So it was your education.
That's what they said. And I remember driving home that same day, and I told my wife, you know what, this is never going to happen to me again.
So did you go back to school?
I went back to school. It was a long road. I went back, finished my BA.
In what? In psychology?
No, I actually went to the College of Letters and Science at UCSB, and I said, can I get some of the units that I finished before? This is almost 20 years ago now, right?
Yeah.
And they said, yeah.
They were still there?
I said, well, what's my quickest way to get a BA? And they said, history. And I said, I'll take it. So my bachelor's degree is in history.
Okay. American history?
American history and the history of Mexico.
Oh, wow.
But the clusters of classes that I studied were the history of immigration in the United States, the history of wealth and the relationship between wealth and poverty, the history of the educational system.
Sounds like a lot of cultural stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's basically what it was, and it's so from a sociological standpoint.
That's pretty cool.
And I went to so I graduated with my BA. Talking about study skills, one of the first things I did. Now we've got computers, and we're 8 years away from the smartphones. Right when I went back to school, maybe 10 years away from the smartphone, and
you had word processors, typewriters that you could correct and go back and edit and stuff like that.
So one of the classes I took
kids are probably looking at this saying, What? Typewriters?
What
are you
is that?
talking about?
What is that? No, I sometimes tell my patients or clients that I remember we used to read Time magazine, and we always read the Times. You could see at the university everybody's reading the Times.
Yeah.
Because my first year in college is when Watergate was going on.
Okay, Nixon.
So we I remember there was an advertisement in Time magazine for a calculator. Just a standard calculator, a little calculator that you now buy, Now
give them away?
Yeah, give them away. It was $85.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
damn.
But anyway, so I decided, I told my wife, I think I need to go back to school, man. I don't want this to ever happen to me again. So I finished my bachelor's degree in history, and I was working with the county, and I went to work with pregnant and parenting teenagers, trying to keep them in school, keep them focused. Their life's not over because they made a mistake, right?
Yeah.
They got tripped up a little bit.
Yeah.
My favorite thing to tell is some of the dads, because I worked with the dads mostly, and I said, what's really cool, man? you're going to be 30 years old and your kid's going to be 15. You can still race him.
Right? You might beat him too.
But they just used to laugh. They'd look, oh, Mr. Lara, come on,
Yeah.
you know. But so while I'm with that program, the Teen Father program, I decided I'm going to go back, apply to a MFT program, which my master's degree in clinical psychology.
So this is while you're working at the time.
I'm
you
working
bettered
with the
yourself
county, yeah.
and got your doctorate in something else. Your
No,
master's.
I don't have a doctorate.
Your master's.
Master's
Your
degree.
master's degree in something
yeah.
else.
Yeah,
That's
so
cool.
so I got a master's in clinical psychology. Eventually got a license to practice, you know, as a therapist, as a behavioral therapist.
And is that the type of work that you guys are doing right now?
That's what I do now. Yeah.
Nice. So what is your typical person that you see every day in your clinic?
Well, when I was at the county, I mostly worked with adolescents, with teenage boys.
Is this through the school system or just?
I was when I was with the county, you know, the first 5 years that I was a therapist, I worked with the county, and I was school-based, what they call a school-based clinician. You know, somebody runs into a problem or has issues there on the school. I was there; they could come and see me.
So you would go to different schools?
I worked at Camarillo, Rio Mesa, Channel Islands.
So Monday one school, Tuesday another school,
Yeah.
blah blah blah, all around.
And then because I spoke Spanish, that I was in the morning at the schools, and then in the afternoon I was actually at the clinic
Oh, okay,
over on Williams and across the street from St. John's Hospital.
gotcha.
And so I worked there for a little while, and then you know, as I mentioned, I think I mentioned it. I don't know if I mentioned it on your podcast here, but my wife got a job because she does the same thing I do.
Oh no, you haven't mentioned it.
Yeah,
So she's also a counselor,
she's a licensed behavioral therapist also.
a therapist also.
Yeah.
Do you guys work in the same offices or?
No, we never have worked in.
Yeah.
Yeah, we never have worked in the same. She likes to work with adults. I've always worked with kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you? I'm pretty sure you do, but do you ever come across somebody that you helped, 10 years ago and they're doing great now? And
You know, I only got one story about that one time when
You wanna share it?
It was more with the Teen Father program. I was over at an Albertsons over in North Oxnard because I still lived in, where you
Yeah.
went to fix my door.
Yeah.
And there's this kid staring at me while I'm waiting in line to pay, and he was in front of me. He kept turning back and looking at me. And I said, hey, because he kept staring at me. It was too obvious, So I said, hey, how you doing? Trying to figure out who he is. Right? Davian Barbon, And,
Yeah.
and he says, you don't remember me, huh, Mr. Lara? And I go, no, I don't. And he says, I said, I'm sorry, I don't. He says, I'm so-and-so. I'm the one that had grandparents that were Filipino. And right away when he said that, I said, yeah, I know you. You're so-and-so. And he said, yeah. He says, I didn't know whether to say hello to you, but I wanted to say hello to you because I wanted to tell you that I turned out okay.
Wow, that's good.
I turned out all right. And I went, well, I guess you did, man.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, a lot of times these troubled kids, teenagers, even messed up adults, they need that little encouragement from a stranger or for somebody that's not, trying to put them down all the time.
Sure.
And that little thing of, hey, I think you're going to be okay. That little push sometimes goes a long way.
Well, I remember one of the things that the teen fathers also, another teen father told me one time, he says, Mr. Lara, what's the hardest thing about being a teen dad? And I go, what's that? He says, everybody wants you to be a man from one day to the next, but they treat you like a stupid little kid. And I thought to myself, boy, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I can see how difficult it is. I mean, it's difficult for a 40, 50-year-old person become a dad. Imagine a 15-year-old that doesn't have the skills to, sustain that family that needs to be sustained.
No, they have no idea.
Yeah.
One day they're on their bed, playing a video game, and the next day
there's a crying kid next to them.
The girlfriend says, I'm pregnant, and they go,
It's like they ran into a brick wall. Boom.
Now what do I do?
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, to the credit of the teen moms, when I was there, boy, they would really get focused. If they weren't paying attention in school, once they knew they were pregnant, many of them, most of them, would would hone in, man. You know, they would, like, I'm going to have a kid and I'm going to take care of my kid.
What's that parental instinct that kicks in, you know, whether you're a male or a female? I mean, you're not the center of the world anymore.
No.
That little person is the center of your world. And so you have to change because now you're in charge of that new life. And unfortunately, some people don't get that, but most people, I think, do. And that's when they turn it around.
Well, I've been a therapist now for, Jesus, almost 20 years. And I talk to a lot of my patients about, emotional thinking, rational thinking, emotional maturity, and your rational maturity. There's two ways of doing it. A lot of people don't always capture that concept,
Do you teach them skills to recognize it when they're doing it?
Yeah, there's a whole process. When I first got started in doing this kind of work that I do now, I copied like 100 coping skills.
Wow.
And I hand them out, to all my patients. The youngest one I have right now is 9, and the oldest is 72.
Wow, and everything in between.
And everything in between, yeah.
Is it the similar skills that you teach them?
Well, it depends on what they're presenting. Sometimes most of my experience comes with anxiety and depression. Deal with a lot of that.
How do you deal with that? Just give you like an example. Say I'm just gonna pick somebody random. A 13-year-old comes up to you that's having issues with feeling anxious because everything she's hearing from the adults and the TVs and the YouTubes and everything is that like the world's gonna end. There's a lot of racism going around. You don't have a chance of making it because you look a certain way or you talk a certain way. So don't even try. What do you tell kids like that?
Well, I begin by explaining. I recently, I didn't read the book. I listened to it because I can't see that well anymore. So,
yeah.
So
thank God for audiobooks. They're amazing.
Yeah. It's a book called The Anxious Generation, and this psychologist who wrote it, he contends that forget his last name right now, but he contends that the kids that were born after 1995 have grown up on the internet, and the kids that have reached adolescence since the smartphone aren't really dealing with real time or real situations. And so their coping skills to cope with anxiety, to cope with criticism. I often tell, a 13-year-old, I might tell her, what's going on? Are you being bullied? Have you had any trauma in your life? Then some of them, they don't know what trauma is. So I'll explain to them what trauma is. It's something where, you feel that you're in danger. You want to run. You feel this, you feel that, And I'll even pull out sometimes the diagnostic book that we use, and I'll read, I'll read out what it says. Do you feel any of these things? No, well, I do. I felt this way. Well, tell me a little bit about that. So it's a process going through.
So you have to like dig it out of them.
I got to dig it out, especially the young kids.
Yeah.
Now, factor in, have they been abused emotionally, sexually, or physically?
Yeah.
That's a whole other area.
Another different level.
So there's a lot of exploration. Every session consists of assessing, asking questions,
And I'm pretty sure they're not going to open up like a book all at first interview. Sometimes you could probably go 4 or 5 years of therapy, and then they tell you about the real cause of what's.
I've been very fortunate that I seem to have a decent amount of retention of the patients that come and see me, no matter what age. And I think I do that because I'm embarrassed to say this, but I think I'm able to retain them, some of these patients, because I do in my practice what I don't do at home. And that is that I'm a blank slate. I let them know, you know what, there's confidentiality involved.
Yeah.
Whatever you tell me stays here. I'm not your mommy or dad. I'm not going to criticize you. It's not my job to tell you what to do.
Right.
But, and I'll often joke and say I have a master's degree in clinical psychology, but I got a PhD in life. So, I've been around a long time. So,
Yeah.
So they just laugh when they do that, and when I say that. But I think it's all about making them comfortable. And a lot of kids, they want somewhere where they can talk and talk. Now I got to tell you, sometimes they'll tell me things that I want to say, really, but I can't do that. I can't do that. I got to meet them where they're at.
Yeah, I guess your initial job with that person at the time is to make sure that you get them to rest their shoulders so they're not stressed. They're not hyper like this. They're like, okay, they're relaxed. Now we can really talk about how we fix the situation.
Well, that's where the coping skills come in. And I say to them, you know what? Some of the things that I'm going to suggest that you could do are going to sound stupidly simple.
Yeah.
Simple sometimes is breathing. Is picturing someplace in your mind that you've been, that you had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
That's we call it positive imagery, right? And and then I'll tell them, but you know what? It sounds easy when I say it, but you've got to do it. That's the hard part.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
Well, first they have to recognize that they need to do that, and then go ahead and do it.
And I'll use the example, a lot of the kids are into sports, What does a batter do before he gets into the batter's box? He looks at his bat and he goes,
yeah, relax.
Yeah. What does a basketball player do before he's going to take a free throw?
He relaxes.
Yeah.
You got to clear your mind.
Yeah.
Relax. Take all the weight off your shoulders and just focus on the moment.
So it's really, the goal is to help them manage their emotions. And I got to tell you, it's really difficult now because, I'm going to age myself now. I'm an old guy, right? But to me, the internet is not a real place.
Well, no.
There's no accountability, you know what I mean? People can say and do whatever they want.
Yeah, plus also all the posts that people put, their pictures of what they're eating and everything. It's the best part of themselves. And so to a kid that doesn't know that or doesn't realize that, they're thinking, oh my goodness, everybody's so much better than I am. Look how they're dressing every time. Look at where the places are going. Look at all the cool stuff that they have.
Absolutely.
And they don't know that they're just posing.
Yeah.
And so that's not real life. Like you said, the internet's not real life.
Not a real place.
And so they set up these expectations of where they think they need to be, and nobody's going to reach that. And so that's crazy. But yeah, you're right. I think the internet has a lot to do with it.
There's a book that we use. It's called the DSM. It stands for Diagnostic Statistical Manual. Mm-hmm. And it's got all the disorders and all the features of it and everything that can happen. The next time it comes out, it's going to have a disorder for use of the cell phone.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And social media.
Do you think our great leaders that we have, and I say that in a sarcastic way, do you think they'll ever figure it out and do something about it to where they regulate it a little bit better?
I think that,
or do the messaging for parents a little bit better?
I think that our politicians, one is particularly extra toxic, okay, but even the quote unquote good guys, I don't think they have a clue. Yeah, I don't think they have a clue. And if they have a clue, there's too many special interests. There's too many people sticking dollar bills in their pocket.
Yeah, there's too much corruption and too
much.
much.
I don't have any data on that, but just guessing the way things go. You know what I mean?
Me and you used to call it payola when we wanted them to play their records.
That's right.
Our politicians have something that's similar to payola, but it's not a good system that they're running right now.
I remember taking envelopes of cash to somebody to play records.
Exactly. So that's what the lobbyists are doing. They're taking envelopes of cash to the politicians so they can help them out with their business.
It's funny. I ask people this all the time. How do you buy music nowadays? I don't even know how you buy.
You don't buy it. You just hear it on the internet. It's for free.
Yeah.
Artists are making their money out of the presentation.
Is that
concerts? Yeah.
I have no idea. I mean, I'm so far removed from that.
Yeah. I mean, they also have deals where they, maybe sign up with Spotify or with Apple Music and stuff, and so they get royalties from people streaming their music.
Okay.
But it's not their main source of income anymore. The main source of income for most of these artists is the presentations.
That's probably why those old rock groups are touring so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's why you have these stadium feeling acts that are happening right now.
My birthday's in July, and my two older kids took me to see the Rolling Stones.
Oh, there you go.
Oh man,
hey, they're still rocking, man.
They still rock, man.
Yeah, they're old farts, but they're still rocking.
My daughter was laughing because she says, "Dad, Mick Jagger's 80 years old."
Yeah,
and he's jumping around, bouncing up and down.
Here's the little fact that he has 2 semi trucks.
Does he?
Yes, that are filled with gym equipment just for him.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they go all over his tour, wherever they're playing, and he has those 2 semi trucks full of his gym equipment so that he can have his workout.
Well, I got to tell you, they rocked it, man.
Yeah.
They were. They're
pretty good.
It was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, their music's not real complicated, but it's very structure-wise, it's very smart. I think it's very smart. Keith Richard puts these chords together. He doesn't even use a 6-string on his guitar. He pulls it off. I don't need it. I don't use it anymore.
Oh, he's got a bass player for that.
Yeah. Well, I when I started playing with Ruben, with Nuestro, I on the internet, gee, I would have given anything to have the information on the internet now.
Right.
Some band calls me, I played with a blues band and a couple of other bands, and they say, "Hey, can you give us a hand? My guitar player can't make it." And I go, "Yeah, what are you playing? Send me a list of the stuff you want to play." I just go on the YouTube.
Yeah, just there it is.
And I know enough about the guitar to at least figure it out. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What I have trouble now is remembering all the notes.
Well, they can put a chip inside you now and with Neuralink, and then you'll be able to play it without even studying it.
Well, once I figure out this, once I know the scale, I just fake it.
Yeah, there you go. So go back to your current work that you have right now, Eddie.
Uh-huh.
You've been in it for a long time. Do you see a decline in our in the quality of our mental health now compared to, say, 10, 15, 20 years ago? Or do you see it the same, but just more obvious now, or more information's out there? Or
I see. Well, I'll answer the question in a couple of parts here.
Okay.
When I first became a therapist, it was a joke. It was a joke. People said, especially in la colonia de uno, la raza de uno, said, "No vas a ir con el doctor de los locos." I can tell you, after doing this so long, los que están locos son los que no van.
Right.
Los que no van.
They don't get fixed.
Well, there was a young lady that told me one time, she came, "Mr. Lara, this is my last session." "Okay, mija, that's great. You feeling good?" Yeah, well, you can always come back, if you need to come back. Yeah, he says, "But I got to tell you this, my mom and dad, who are folks about my age," okay? And she says, "My mom and dad said that my generation invented therapy." And I said, "Really?" I said, "Well, tell her, if they ask you again, that topic comes up, tell them that my generation invented drugs and my parents' generation invented alcohol."
Yeah.
They're both coping skills, bad ones,
Yeah.
but they're both coping skills.
And before they used to beat up their wives.
Yeah, well, they still do that.
Or kick the dogs.
Yes, some people still do that.
Yeah, that's
so,
crazy.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I would say that there certainly is more attention put to it.
That's a good thing, don't you think?
It is, as long as we can move forward. Che Guevara wrote one time that once the revolution is won, it's no longer a revolution. It becomes institutionalized.
Yeah.
And so my point of that is that when they come up with a new idea, the moment they set it in motion and it becomes, an administration or some, way of doing things,
Yeah.
it's no longer an innovative idea.
Yeah.
The other thing that happens too is that, with a lot of the services that are out there right now, it's not performance based. In other words, there are people, I don't mean this in a good way or bad way, it's the way it is in my experience, that, there are people that have been receiving mental health services with the county that have been there for 10 years. So what are you doing for them? They're just recycling, they're just recycling. Now, a lot of that is just the nature of their illness. They're schizophrenic, or they're bipolar, or their borderline personality. You know, these are like people that are going to be chronically mentally ill.
Right.
But if you develop programs that aren't based on them taking medication all the time, but that's only a facet of their treatment, and you also try to incorporate them some way, you know, into the community, you know, to
society, so they could be
useful, so they can feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
When I first went to work for the county, my job at that time was to find them employment, the chronically mentally ill, and it was like I remember the people that hired me said, "All you got to do is develop the job sites, and once you place them, your job is over." No, no,
Yeah.
because you know these people have become symptomatic, and then you got them on the job somewhere, and they're not performing, right?
Yeah.
Why is anybody going to hire you if you don't perform?
Right. You have to be productive.
You got to be productive. You got to be at least be able to fill, you know, put your finger in the leak, you know, for what they need. It might be something as simple as wiping down tables.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but they need to have the coping mechanism to be able to wipe the table, but also, you know, not get overly excited if somebody's yelling because they dropped a soda.
Yeah.
Or they get anxious because they're yelling over there, and then they go out there and they can't function.
Back then,
So that's why your job becomes important, where you teach them the coping skills.
I have to go talk to them, and I got to go talk to the employer, and I got to intercede, and I got to do this, and I got to do that. But yeah. So at that time, you know, and I found that job to be stressful from the standpoint is that for it to be a successful placement, you know, they had to stay on the job 90 days. Trying to keep them working at the same place for 90 days was a challenge.
Yeah. After 90 days, you figure, okay, well, they learned coping skills.
Well, even if they got fired on the 91st day, at least, you know, that's the cynic thing about it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the programs are just looking for what they've determined is a result.
Yeah.
But if he gets let go on the 91st day, did we really do him any good?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so all these, you know, my wife and I used to call it the dog and pony show. You know, you get all these people coming up and say, "Oh, we're doing this, we're doing." I'll say it, you know, even though you might get some grief on this comment that I'm going to make. It's almost like the Democrats, you know, you're constantly patting themselves on the back.
Yeah.
You know, if you've been here for 10 years and your husband or wife are permanent residents, you can stay here.
Yeah.
Well, how many people fall into that? You know?
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that, you know, a business like that sometimes becomes like a farming business, and they're using the poor broken souls as their crop.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah, exactly.
If I fix it, that means he's not coming back, so I won't have to be able to charge the hours that I'm charging. So I'm going to keep him on the string.
When I was placing the adults, I remember there was a nurse that came up to me and said, "You know, Ed, you guys are wasting your time, you know, finding these people jobs." And then I said, "Really?" He says, "Yeah, they're just going to recycle. They're just going to, you know, they're just going to become symptomatic again." And I said, "Yeah, but you know what? My job is to raise the bar."
Right. Yeah.
Now, they may not make it, but my job is to try to get them to reach a little bit more.
Yeah. How often do you, when you have a young person, do you deal with young people, right?
Yeah, a lot.
Mostly. Do you talk to the parents, and you see that a lot of times the parent's the problem, not the child?
A lot.
Would you say it's more than 30%?
I'd say it's more than 50.
More than 50%?
Yeah, because sometimes they're children themselves. Sometimes they don't have... I'm not going to use the word education because I don't think that in my old age, I've come to believe that wisdom and education aren't always the same.
Yeah, I was going to say, use the word wisdom. They don't have the wisdom of...
They don't have the skills. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
You know, because most of us learn to be parents from our parents.
Right.
So if you know, got yelled at and your parents fought in front of you and, you know, you got beat with a belt every time you...
That's the norm.
That's the norm for them. So that's where they learn to be parents, so they carry that on. In order to stop that, they need to get help. Yeah. You know, they need to be open to getting help.
Do you ever bring them in after they bring their kids? Say, you know, we need this to be like a family session where we talk about your kid's problem, but we need to get you involved too.
Where I work now, we don't really do family therapy, but now and then, if I see that there's a possibility, or I'm always planting seeds. I can't tell somebody how to parent their kid, no matter how wrong it is, right?
Right.
Because certainly I did wrong things with my own kids, right? I wasn't a therapist then, but yeah. So I might bring them in just to plant some seeds and let them know. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
But I always ask the kid, especially if it's a teenager, you think would it be okay if we brought in your mom and your dad? And I leave it up to them. They're in control.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I try to empower them some, because it's their treatment. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, some parents are really good about it, but I would say the parents that are really good about it are 2 or 3 out of 10.
Wow. That's not very good odds.
No, because we're so politically we're polarized.
Yeah.
We're tribal.
Well, tribal.
Yeah. And I think these days it's like my kid has to be tough. When I was a mediator with a court in Kern County, I had one guy say, I just treat her because the mom was complaining the way the dad talked to her, and he says, well, I got to teach her what life is really like. Life is tough. And then I looked at the sheet, the information sheet. The kid was 5 years old.
Holy shit.
I wanted to tell him, are you serious?
Wow.
But that was his hang up, not hers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
So we need to work on our parenting skills as a society.
Well, for a while there, when parents would be sent to me for child neglect or child abuse or child endangerment, I used to do classes when I was with the county, and I used to teach them that there was 4 basic parenting styles. Mm-hmm. And the first one is what they call authoritative. Oh, no, I'm sorry, authoritarian. Those are like my parents. You do what I tell you, te van a faltar dientes.
Don't ask why. Just
don't ask why.
Say.
Just do what I tell you. Yeah. The second is authoritative. Mira, mijo, cuando llegue de la casa yo quiero que saque la basura porque tengo que cocinar y si la dejas huele muy feo cuando esté cocinando.
So you're telling them what to do, but you're giving them a reason.
Yeah, give them a reason because we're a team. The third is passive. On a negative end, those are the parents that smoke weed with their kids.
They're buddies with their kids.
They're friends, or
gotta
else
be one of the worst ones.
In a positive way. No, it could be positive. Tú sabes que te aventaste con las calificaciones. Te voy a llevar a cenar o comer una pizza o algo.
So those are the reward.
The reward, yeah. Your friend, you're kind of looking at their level, you're giving them something. And the third is unforgivable. That's neglectful. Those are the parents that usually sometimes are on drugs or are drunk all the time and they don't even know what their kids are doing.
Yeah.
So that's totally out of it. I always tell parents, and I would suggest to them, my opinion, it's up to you, what you want to do. Sometimes you got to be a cop. Sometimes you got to be a teacher. And sometimes you got to be a friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta learn where to pick your spots.
And not all kids are the same. They react to different things. Sometimes that one kid will only learn a certain way. You can use the carrot or use the stick, and you have to figure out what works best with your kid, and try to use that.
Yeah.
And sometimes the things you tell them now doesn't click into their brain until 6 months, a year, 3 years later, and so.
There's a lot of good families, a lot of good parents. I see the ones. I'm not gonna say, like I said, to me, education and wisdom is 2 different things.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of good parents that great kids. Sometimes I have some friends who are teachers or even plumbers or construction workers, but they don't drink, or they come home, or if they have a drink, they have it when they get together with me. No, just kidding. but they.
I'm a social drinker myself.
I don't know. I told you I had some health issues about a year and a half ago. Yeah, I had congested heart failure.
Oh, okay.
And I sometimes I need to have a beer, especially when I'm eating marisco. I go, como lo hacen los mexicanos, a good cocktail. I want to have a modelo.
Yeah, it goes good with the food.
I'm not much into micheladas, but I guess everybody is these days.
Yeah, I can do without the vegetables in my beer. I'll put my vegetables on the plate. Leave the vegetables out of my beer.
That's right. I like that one. I like that one.
Yeah. Well, Eddie, I want to thank you so much for spending some time.
It's great pleasure, man.
And this is the first episode that we've done with me and you talking about, just kind of telling people where you're coming from and stuff.
Uh-huh.
So maybe down the road we can have some really cool conversations and narrowing down to a certain subject that we can talk
absolutely.
about.
Well, I don't know a lot of stuff, but yeah, we can talk about one thing specific.
Man. This is the people talking. We talk about whatever the hell we want.
That's right.
We don't have to make sense.
That's right. I've been watching some of your podcasts, and there's some interesting conversation.
Absolutely. Most of them are fun as hell,
Yeah.
They could be informative. They could be non-informative.
Well, it'd be really cool. I think sometimes if young people, in my opinion, that if they could somehow, tune into your podcast and say, like Pepe and some other people you've had on that have been residents of the county for a long time, right?
Yeah.
And talk about what it used to be like.
Ray.
Ray, my brother-in-law.
Yeah.
And he, these are people that have been, we grew up in Oxnard. We lived in another period, another time, and I think it would be interesting for young people to find out that, Oxnard and the area, the community has been in other places, there were some negative things back there too, obviously, but there's a lot of good things. I sometimes tell my young patients, I say, maybe you can learn from me and I'll learn from you.
That's all we need to do.
And I ask them some questions all the time. What does that work? They really are, great about sharing stuff. But thank you, Alex. Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure.
You're welcome. And
I'm glad we connected again, too.
Absolutely. It's been a while since I seen you, and I was really happy to know that you were still around and
still alive.
Absolutely. A long ways to go. All right. Thank you, Ed.
Okay. Thank you, Alex.